Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Akimalo in Abuja. President Bola Tinubu has returned to Abuja today after spending the past few days in Lagos to celebrate the Eid al-Adha celebration in Lagos, where he had a series of meetings, including the meeting with the President of Guinea-Bissau, Umaru Sissoco Embalo. He met also with Oba of Lagos and visited Ogun State, where he also met with the Alake of Egbaland and some other traditional rulers there. The president today was received at the airport by senior military officers, including also the NSA, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation were on hand to receive him, and the Inspector General of Police, all waiting to receive him back to Abuja since he left last week for France and on to London and returned to Lagos and now back to the seat of power in Abuja, the nation's capital. Meanwhile, the presidency has been reacting to a report of the European Union on the conduct and the outcome of the 2023 general elections, where the European Union Election Observation Mission highlighted 6 areas they think Nigeria can improve on in its electoral process. The presidency has rejected the EU's stance and assessment of the exercise. In a statement by Mr. Dele Alake today, the president's special advisor on communications and strategy, the government says the EU's observation is inaccurate and sinister. The statement in part reads, quote, "We find it preposterous and unconscionable that in this day and age, any foreign organization of whatever hue can continue to insist on its own yardstick and assessments as the only way to determine the credibility and transparency of our elections. Now that the organization has submitted that it claimed to be its final report on the elections, we can now categorically let Nigerians and the entire world know that we were not unaware of the machinations of the European Union to sustain its largely unfounded bias and claims on the election outcomes. For emphasis, we want to reiterate that the 2023 general elections, most especially the presidential election won by President Bola Tinubu, the All Progressives Congress, were credible, peaceful, free, fair, and the best organized general elections in Nigeria since 1999. There is no substantial evidence provided by the European Union or any foreign and local organization that is viable enough to impeach the integrity of the 2023 election outcomes." End of quote. Tonight, we assess the first month of President Tinubu's administration and its impact on the average Nigerian. President Tinubu took office with a vision to revitalize the Nigerian economy and bring about positive change. In his first month, he wasted no time in implementing key economic policies aimed at tackling the challenges faced by the average Nigerian. One of the notable measures was the removal of fuel subsidy and the merger of exchange rates. These reforms have already shown results and its effects being felt by Nigerians in every nook and cranny of the country. While it is still early in the day, the initial result of the President Tinubu's economic policies have been promising to some of observers who have noted that some of these policies were needed and they were right decisions. But what about the timing? However, there are ripple effects and implications. And tonight, we get an expert and deep insight on the economic policies of the government. Perhaps you might be able to correlate how much you've been spending 1 month ago before the government, President Tinubu took over as president, and what you spend now, perhaps what you spend on food monthly and what you spend on transportation and other issues relating to your life and well-being in the last month, comparing to what is now obtainable. And perhaps the decision of the government perhaps is one thing that Nigerians can hope that there will be better days ahead, and maybe patience could be the key word. But let's analyze all of these policies. It's the first month of Bola Tinubu in the saddle. How far has he gone? What are the indices and the realities on the ground? Joining me to discuss this is a very notable economist, a development economist, Professor Ken Ife. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Let's do some kind of holistic analysis in a summary of the Bola Tinubu's economic agenda and the decisions. Some have described it as populist in tendency, embraced by some Nigerians who thought that these decisions were needed. The former president had come out to say, I would have done it, if not because of these reasons and these reasons. But in the whole, looking at the policies on the face value, were they the right policies?
There's absolutely no doubt that those are the correct policies. For a long time, we have disagreed with the notion that you can subsidize consumption, ab initio. What countries do is to subsidize production, because in subsidizing production, you create jobs. You keep the jobs in your country. And as long as it's well managed and there's a strong accent on productivity, it will find its way out to earn you the hard currency that you need to do other things that you want to do. So that cry has been there. And I want us to make a difference between the policy and the delivery of the policy. There's absolutely
the impact,
the delivery, and of course the consequences.
Yeah.
But in the consequence, we can't jump because it's too early.
Early in the day.
It's too early in the day to assess the full ramification of the action taken. Simply because speculation is very rife in our country, especially around the currency. And two, there is political economy factors, as you know, that has emasculated economic development of this country for a very long time. And as Okenyiwala put it, if you try to fight corruption, corruption will fight back. Mm-hmm. So there are transient reactions and hoarding and all kinds of activities that will characterize the first month of this delivery. But over a medium term, short to medium term, they will begin to settle. For example, this Forex issue. You could see how it is going. It's going like that, swinging, but it is heading downwards. Even though it's swinging and swinging, it's heading downwards. So what that tells you is that you have to deal with the supply side of the Forex. You know, just keep parking all the argument on the demand side. You have to deal and break down all the elements that affect the supply side of Forex.
Prof, let me warn you that on this program, most of my viewers here are not just like me. Some of us are mathematically illiterate and economic illiterates in some sense, because we want to see in the layman language what this means. What do you mean by the demand and the supply?
Okay.
If you can break it down for some of our viewers to understand in the simplest form.
Forex is price of exchange, foreign exchange. Interest rate is price at which you borrow money and pay back. You have inflation, it's also price at which your goods, change over, is price. Monetary policy rates, all of these rates and things are prices. And we know that in any price mechanism, there has to be supply side and demand side. And then they say whatever comes out eventually is a resolution of the equilibrium price is a resolution of those two factors, supply and demand. If you have less demand, the prices change and respond to that. And if you have high demand, the price responds to that. So you try to find equilibrium price where both the demand and supply can sustainably carry the day. But what I'm saying here is that until we deal with that issue of demand and sort it out, we are going to be continuing to, the supply of that dollar.
What would you say that what policy decision would you say would help in focusing on that demand side?
Supply side.
And the supply side, rather, sorry.
Yeah, the biggest challenge we have right now is why are we not producing PMS? And of course, the other products. Why are we not producing them? So, because why are we not producing them? We have 4 refineries under the management of NNPC, and they are not working. Very old, and there are issues. They need billions and billions to get them back into life. But we say, are there no alternatives? Do we not have any alternative? There was an alternative where Dangote gave $650 million to buy 2 of them, and then Yar'Adua came in and returned the money to him. And I think it's a big regret that we didn't, because we would never have been in this position if Dangote was allowed to run those 2 refineries.
So Dangote has his own now, 650,000 barrels per day.
I know. He believed in it, and then he went ahead.
Could it be a saving grace for us momentarily?
When it comes in full stream, of course it will. It definitely will. Even though being in an export-free zone, he was going to be entitled to do only 40% to the country. But who knows whether there is a way they can temporarily grant us some relief to give us a bit more than that 40%. But we shouldn't believe that, we shouldn't think that he's going to give us all his fuel. He's under contract from people supplying him crude from other continents, 3 continents. Is you know what we are doing? We are sending our crude to some people to refine for us. How about people who are sending to him to refine for them? He will send it back to them. You know, depends on the agreement that he has.
So his obligation is not 100% to Nigeria?
No, not at all. Although we did a clever thing by buying in, NNPC buying in, investing into it, so that at least if we get that 20%, we're entitled to get 20%, you know, something like that. But as I said, 40 is always the number for the country.
The Port Harcourt refinery, Warri refinery, there's some money that has been pumped there. Should these come on stream, we understand by the end of this year, stroke early next year, one of those should come on stream also. Would that help our situation?
It will help, but there are always hostages to all that story. We'll be hearing that for how many years? We have.
So you don't trust the process of the government?
I can't trust that. I cannot trust that process because it's been going on for so many years.
And look at the
pragmatic. Be more pragmatic about this. 75 licenses were issued for modular refineries. Only about 1 or 2 are actually delivering. And how much is that? It's only $70 million to do 20,000 barrels of crude. So if you have 10 of those, we would never have needed to go and buy anywhere else because they will refine 200,000 barrels. At what cost? Just about 50 to 60 billion naira. Any of those 5 companies that are transporting our crude and bringing them, any of them, all of them can put 1 each within 3 months because they go to Texas and bring them off shelf. So I still can't understand.
So I mean, this
NNPC should take share, even if it is 10%, to prime them to come. And I've listened to the argument that, well, all of them will come on stream overnight because when the price is removed, when the subsidy is removed. And I said, I hear that. And I don't think that is correct because the prices have been removed now for 1 month. How many of them have suddenly jumped in to set up the refinery? So we have.
If there's something the president needs to do immediately, would it be to invest heavily in what can mitigate this gap that you're talking about? The modular refinery, making the 1 or 2 of the refineries work immediately. Would that could take us between now and the mid of next year? Would that be reasonable?
Oh, that would be reasonable. And also, there are other things that could also bring immediate cash to us. For example, I'm aware of 2 proposals that for FLNG, that is floating liquefied natural gas. If that happens, you're talking about months within which they will be mounted. Because if you go to Chicago, you're going to see about 4 of them hanging out there waiting for an urgent work to move them somewhere to start producing LNG. And that can bring us a lot of money. And I hear things like
single policy
200.
Single policy of eradicating multiple exchange rate, and it's given the problem already is there for the government to fix, and the problem seems to be a huge one. But it won't go away easily. And you look at it again, there is a subsidy removal policy also, which has its own cascading effect on the bottom line, the baseline of the money that goes into the pocket of an average citizen.
Correct. That subsidy removal decision is the correct one. It has been long overdue. And you can excuse the urgency about how it was just announced. You can excuse that because the country has waited for this for a long time. It's not that there's no benefit in having subsidy. It's not that there's no benefit. There is benefit because the people have paid so much tax. They have lack of infrastructure. There's lacking. Every opportunity for many businesses to thrive is just being denied. So people think that petrol is the only thing that we can all get. So there is a case, but not the level of it. not the quantum. And the challenge that we had was that we didn't quite close up the negotiation and get a package out before we took it. So we just took it and then have to work the package. That's the only challenge that we have. But is it a correct? It is absolutely a correct decision. But the consequence of it is what we want to make sure that it doesn't hurt people, below the line.
How much of impact do you think this is having on the purchasing power of the average citizen right now?
Yeah, it's devastating because I can give you an example. A week ago, about 10 days ago, I went to the market and I bought, a basket of tomato, 4,500 naira. Then came back just a few days ago to buy another one and it was 7,500 naira. And then it shocked me because pepper was about the same price. When I saw these prices, my heart sank because I'm thinking about people who earn 30,000 naira salary can't actually use that money to do one shopping that
Prof,
day.
some people who naturally will buy ram for the Salah festivity have resorted to buying chicken because they cannot afford it. You know how, it's almost 3 times or 4 times the price that is sold last year that is sold a few days ago, and it has hindered their ability to be able to do that kind of festivity. Is that kind of impact that is ongoing? But for the question, some of these people who are wondering and looking towards the Bola Tinubu renewed hope agenda is how long is this suffering going to be?
Well, I don't think it's going to go on for too long because...
That's good news.
Yes, I don't think it will go on for too long because first of all, there's the festivity, the Salah. And usually at the point of that, during Christmas and during this particular Salah, you have a spike in the price of goods. And then, of course, leading to that moment is also pressure on demand. So I'm aware of those. But I think in the next few months, it will subsidize. That's my best hope. And of course, we also have to think about harvest of some short-term crops. 3 months crops will begin to come in. Maize is coming in and all of that. So some of them will have impact on the price. But are we going to have a general rise in prices as reflected in the inflation? Of course, yes. We will have substantial rise in inflation.
How bad could it be, the rise?
You will see it next month. If you don't see it this month, because that increase of about almost 200% on petrol just missed the last count of the inflation. And now this month on and by next month, you will see the full impact. Because it's not just the rise on petrol price, you have the rise in transport price, you have the rise in rent, everything. That's right. I'm just giving you an example of 100% rise. Everybody's reviewing prices. Universities are reviewing.
Some people say they will trek halfway, take transportation halfway because their salary cannot carry that.
Output will go down because if people are going to work only 2 days a week instead of 3 days or 5 days a week, it will affect output.
In Kwara and Edo State, the government there have asked workers, that provided leeway for them, that you don't have to come to work every day.
And we actually had 2020 period where COVID-19 drove us to virtual working. And then suddenly, 2021, they abandoned all of that. We could have done, even in UK now, some of my children are working from home. And still nothing happened to their salary. They're all working from home because most of them are ICT gurus. But there's no reason why we could not have continued to implement that home
So,
working.
Prof, let me bring this challenge for you. And I need you to help us with your analysis. It might be a very difficult one, though. If you look at some of the measures that's coming from the government quarters and some of the proposition, in fact, that Labour is bringing to government, it does look to me that there is so much focus on civil servants that should get palliatives. And there are those who argue that the population of civil servants in the entire Nigerian population is just a little. There are those who are in the informal sector. There are those who are even in the private business. They are thinking of increasing minimum wage. This will only impact on a segment of the population. And the larger segment of the population will still be feeling the heat of it. What kind of policy do you think can be immediate and can affect a larger population of the people?
I'm glad you actually asked that question. But in fairness, I know about, your people always say, why is it that the civil servant consumes 70% of our resources and only 30% go out by way of capital expenditure? And then I have all these other stories. But remember that they pay the most tax.
Really?
Yeah.
The personal income tax?
Oh, yeah, because they are there on the line, so they pay the most. And so you're going to have to balance that. And secondly, you require them to go to work every day, don't you? And then they're subject to the transport costs.
But what about the private sector workers?
All of them are hit. Let me explain. You know, there was a time the government, the last administration, wanted to do, wanted to give 5,000 to about 40 million people. And then World Bank calculated and felt that about 3% of the fuel consumption is actually consumed by that particular class we are targeting that resources to. And that story hasn't quite changed. So the civil servants are affected the most by the shortage of fuel, the high cost of fuel and the high cost of transport, because they have to go to work. They haven't got any choice. And their salaries are very limited. And that's why they are asking for 200,000 or 100,000, whatever it is. You can do the arithmetic on their salary and what you take and what they pay for the transport. So that's very significant.
Prof, let me allow you to listen to the World Bank. They are offering $800 million US. And there are these arguments, whether it's a grant or it's a loan. Mr. Femi Falana was on this program on Friday, and he said it can never be a loan, because a loan has a legal process which it will go. And Nigeria cannot, by law, cannot. But I'll allow you to listen to what the World Bank is offering Nigeria in exchange for the removal of fuel subsidy. Take a listen to the World Bank representative.
What we've seen are really, from our perspective, the beginnings of that move through these bold decisions that have been taken. I know they've been controversial, but the way I would put it, I like to use metaphors. It's a bit like when you have, internal hemorrhaging, and it's getting to the point where the patient is in critical condition. You have to do emergency surgery. It may be painful. It will come as a shock. But that emergency surgery is needed, and it takes courage to take that first step. And that, in our opinion, is what has been taken just through these removal of the fuel subsidies, move towards unifying the exchange rates. But it will be painful. It has been a shock. And that's where the post-surgical, post-operative care, that immediate period after, is critical, and that's the next few months. That's where, making sure that the trust of ordinary Nigerians is rebuilt, and that there's some efforts to cushion the shock.
Prof, your reaction to World Bank stance on this?
I respect World Bank. It's a world-class body, and it does well on macroeconomic analysis, especially on the fiscal side. I accept all the data that they've given out on this matter, but first of all, I don't quite accept that $800 million would go to palliative, or that. I don't accept. Let me explain to you why. Government has liberty to use its internally generated revenue to do anything it wishes to do. To share it out, to do palliative. Government is entitled to do that. Secondly, World Bank has a lot of grant funding in their possession. So if World Bank wants to give money to our poor people, they can go directly through government's approval, go and share those. They can also give it to share. But when you come to borrowing, we have laws that govern borrowing. And one such law is Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. It hasn't yet been amended officially, by the act itself, but there have been the Finance Acts 2020 and 2021 that have amended some of the sections. Now, section 1.12 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act says the fiscal deficit to GDP should be 3%. They amended the Finance Act 2020, amended it to increase it to about 5%. And we knew why it has to be increased, because of the exigencies of the time. Another one that was affected was the section 22, which talks about operating surplus, that the agencies of government that generate revenue should send 80% of the operating surplus to the government coffer, TSA. They amended that to say to the Accountant General, go out and get cost to revenue, 50% of whatever revenue they generate, take it away. Then the one that hits this particular argument is Section 41. Section 41 says the conditions for borrowing for all levels of government. It says it has to be borrowing, has to be for capital expenditure or human resource development.
Does this fall under human resource development?
Wait. The human resource development is about education, it's about health, it's about employment. It is not about paying salaries. It's not about giving grants to people to share. It has nothing to do with that.
So there is a legal problem with this.
It doesn't fit. This doesn't ab initio fit the original act.
So if this money is given to Nigeria...
Let me explain.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me explain.
Yeah.
The challenge you have here is that that same law requires, that same section 41 requires you wanting to borrow that money to do cost-benefit analysis so that we can see the intention of the law is for you to invest in such a project, whether it's infrastructure or any other, that has the capability of paying back that money and is really economic. So that's why it wants cost-benefit analysis. Then it actually went to a very dangerous point there where it says any lending by any financial institution outside this framework is unlawful. It says it clearly. If you lend to any of the tiers of government outside this framework, is unlawful. Now, the area for debate is this. The Section 12 of the Finance Act 2021 wanted to amend, has actually amended that particular Section 41. What it says is this. It qualifies it by saying, and to include urgent national importance and to undertake critical reforms of significant national impact. So, what significant national impact and urgent reform are you going to achieve by taking money and sharing it out?
Prof.
So, do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying that it should not be done.
Yeah.
It is necessary for you to development.
There's a legal conundrum there.
In development, there are two fast lanes. There's fast lane and slow lane. The fast lane is when you go for areas of economic importance, areas that have fast growth, fast growth cluster, invest there, entrepreneurs, they generate wealth. But there is the other lane, which is slow lane, where people are poor, disadvantaged, and at the brink. So you have to do something. And that is the area where they are referring to. We have to do something for these people. Otherwise,
the pains is there, the bruise is there.
But the thing is that
and
government should use its own internally generated revenue to address that.
Right.
World Bank can give us some of their grants. There's no shortage of grants to give to people.
The president,
but you can't. Let me tell you something, please. National Development Plan 2021 to 2025 says government intends to borrow 350 trillion naira to prosecute the plan. Federal government made it very clear that all levels of government can only bring 50 billion, under 50 billion. Private sector go and get 300 billion. That's what that is. I need to hear arguments about how you are going to leverage that private sector lending to be able to deal with it. Because, if you can bring that $800 million, there will be some private sector programs led and leveraged by the private sector that could give us that accelerator. Yeah. So let's look for that. And just not share. You share, you will get into the situation that Britain is.
Yeah, Prof.
Security.
Because this is where I would like us to anchor. And I'll allow you to listen to President Tinubu and his main reasons of taking that decision. Because a lot of people say he went off script. And he has even come out to admit that he went off script, despite Mr. Alake and Mr. Edun advising him not to put it in his speech about subsidy going on the very first day of his assuming office. But I'd like you, let's assume Mr. Edun, for example, who is in charge of monetary policy, and the president himself are watching right now what could be done. But the argument, before I get into that, the argument about the civil servant paying more taxes, we have about 720,000 of federal civil servants in this country. The question is, how much are these civil servants, how much do they earn that amounts to them paying the highest taxes?
I think the tax regime is quite high in Nigeria, though. Why? Because even if you say theoretically on paper that it actually looks reasonable, and how about what they call implicit tax? Implicit tax is this. A survey said that 68% of manufacturers provide power for themselves 90% of the time. Now, people, if you want to do a business, you have to provide your own power. If you want to water, you have to do your own water. By the time you add all that costs, they're all taxed. And the same thing, inflation is also, there's inflation tax. Because when you have all these overdraft ways and means that came to over 24 trillion, it is inflation tax because it's also generating inflation on some way or the other. So people are being, and then you have multiple taxation, which everybody says have to be streamlined. So this, we are hostage to an infinite regime of taxes. The better is, the more we can do for the workers, the better, because they don't have anything.
Prof, let me allow you to listen for a moment, and we will anchor on what you think is a way out. We'll listen to the President's decision of wanting to remove subsidy. A lot of people may agree, but the question is, what are we doing to the plight of the average Nigerian? Take a listen to the President when he met traditional rulers and he was seeking their support in all of these policies. Take a listen to President Bola Tinubu.
To me, I don't want to very many. But the Nigerian project is of paramount importance to me. That's why I'm here. Nigeria must survive. Nigeria must develop. Nigeria must make progress. Why should we, in good sense, in good heart, feed smugglers, be a Father Christmas to the neighboring country, and even though they say not every day is Christmas. So, the elephants, that's what's going to bring Nigeria to its knee, is the subsidy. A country that cannot pay salary,
Prof, let's anchor on this note in 60 seconds.
This is, the President in his element offering all the best reasons, all the good reasons for the subsidy removal. We can't take anything away from that. But can we spend 1/4 of the energy we are spending here on looking at the supply side of this equation? Because 79% of the forex we earn, which is what is all about, 79% of the dollar that we earn in this country comes from crude oil. 11% comes from gas. Between the two of them is 90%. So why can't we discuss that? Why can't you break it down? How do we increase that supply? We only have 10%. And that 10% is diaspora remittance, which can also, you can see some of them are now coming through the official window because, things are moving.
They've opened it up.
Some of them are coming in. And some of the bank's own dollars are also coming in. But these are all temporary. And then you have the foreign direct investment. You've seen the graph, how it is going down, steep drop. Then you have portfolio investment that are rejoicing, partly, some part of it, like in the capital market, you've seen warm reception, they're happy. But for how long? Is it sustainable? Then you've got and then of course, the other side of the portfolio investment comes and goes anytime. And then you've seen the rating agencies getting concerned about the situation. So I know that some of them are like Fitch have deferred not Fitch, JP Morgan. They deferred their decision, but they're going to come down. So that area is very tight.
Has to be tackled urgently.
Yeah, it has to be urgently tackled. The supply side, and nobody wants to talk about that. And that's where you have the political economy, emasculation of anything called development, and then you have assets, you have solid minerals it's not contributing to the growth. South Africa is almost 40%. You come to the oil, crude, in some areas you can't get, some places you are spilled in the water, some places. I mean, I saw a program yesterday showing what is sitting in the NNPC monitoring system, showing where all the things are going on, all the informal refineries are going on. And what, if they have all that, why the dashboard?
Prof.
What's actually going on?
Prof, thanks so much indeed. I'm hoping that the average Nigerian world is watching, where powering their generator somehow, or watching on their mobile phones who have some soccer, and hope that there is soccer coming along the line. Thanks so much, Prof, for bringing this in, sir. I really appreciate it. Professor Ken Ife is an economist and he's been sharing his views on this.